Hello everyone and welcome to my review for One Piece chapter 944. Oda has this tendency of taking his time to set up pieces on the chessboard, and then eventually, like once the pieces are set up properly, it just turns into chaos, and this is what this chapter is. We start off with Boa giving a little monkey dressed as Luffy some meat, and the only question I have about this cover page is that does it say Oda on the monkey shirt? I know it says monkey, but it also looks like it says Oda. We move on from the Oda monkey and we open up in the flower capital with some sakura petals for dramatic effect. And unfortunately, both Zoro and Sanji agree that they don't have time to interact with each other because they have a bigger problem, right? And I was actually looking forward to them bickering and arguing about, Kumarasaki having a crush on Zoro, but then also Sanji having a higher bounty than Zoro. The back and forth would have been great. But anyway, I'm sure we'll get that at some point. There are more important things to deal with right now. I know some fans are expecting Zoro to confront Sanji over what happened in Whole Cake Island, the disrespect against Luffy against his captain. But personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's water under the bridge. Plus, I think that Zoro has a lot of respect for Luffy, so he would probably trust Luffy's judgment and say, like, I mean, if you guys sorted your stuff out, if this got resolved already, then it's not my place to interfere because Luffy's the captain anyway. So if he already decided that you guys are good after what happened, then you're good. Anyhow, Shinobu says that they have to take away Yasu's body because it's disrespectful to just leave it around like that. They're probably going to bury it in one of two places. They're either going to bury him in Ringo, or they're going to bury him in the ruins of Oden Castle, where the tombstones for the rest of the retainers are. Zoro gives Toko to Sanji, and then he aims at Orochi to try and avenge Yasu's death with a Nitoryu Nanaji Nippondoho, which is a more intense variation of the 72 cannon that he uses in Strong World against Shiki. Back then, Shiki blocked the attack with relative ease, and it seems like it's the same case here, except it's Kyoshiro doing the blocking. And then I noticed that after Kyoshiro blocks the attack, we immediately cut to a shot of Komurasaki's face. And so I was thinking that normally, if Kyoshiro was actually a problem, like if this guy were an issue, I think Komurasaki would have said something like to warn Zoro and say something like, oh my gosh, Zoro, no, this is Kyoshiro. You have no idea what you're up against. Please don't fight him. Stay away. You know, the normal standard like cliche shonen background noise of the crowd. But then she doesn't say anything. So I was like, like what's going on here? And then in this chapter, Kyoshiro has a very interesting line where Zoro tells him, like, just get out of my way, please. I need to get to the Shogun. And he's like, nope, I can't do it because, and I quote, I am the Shogun's guard dog. So to me, that's not a very flattering way of referring to yourself. Like, I'm the guard dog for this guy. Especially since we've seen Kyoshiro criticize or be critical of Orochi's superstitious ways before. Actually, when he was introduced, he was making fun of him. So it just kind of seems suspicious. There's definitely more than meets the eye when it comes to Kyoshiro's character. And then when he says, I'm this guy's guard dog, to me that just sounds like he just wanted to make that public. Like, this is all part of the act, Zoro boy. Then we get this great panel of the full Allosaurus X-Drake form behind Sanji. At first I thought Drake was going for his hybrid form, but no, he just goes for the full transformation. Drake tries to chomp down on Sanji and Toko. Sanji dodges that, and if I were him, I'd probably say something like, where do these dinosaurs keep coming from? There's a very small panel where Sanji has his leg up against Drake's face, and the leg seems like it's darkened, and I remember from last week, like the ending, right, with him standing next to Zoro, Sanji has his bare leg, like it's a hairy leg, right? You know, well, both his legs are hairy, but this leg in that panel seems kind of dark. So it's like, is that hardening? Is that black armament hockey on his leg? It's in the panel where he says, you bastard! Frankie comes in there to save Zoro the same way that he saved Robin back in Enias Lobby from getting shot at. And I like how Zoro knows that Frankie's about to shield him because he tells him, they're all yours, before he actually enters the scene. Frankie then goes in with a strong right. He takes Yasu's body and starts running away. And then Usopp has Frankie's six. He has his back covered on top of a roof. He's actually standing on top of a roof. And he takes care of some of the guards that are about to shoot Frankie from behind. Because if you remember, Frankie's back is still human. His front is cyborg, but his back is actually his weak point. And then we get a shot of Robin and Nami and they don't do anything. I'm sure the anime will expand on the girls' roles in regards to the action in this sequence. Although, given how the anime has been treating the Reverie, it's kind of hard to trust the anime with anything, to be honest, at this point. We got a brief shot of Hawkins in this chapter behind Drake, but he also didn't do much of anything in this chapter, so hopefully he does something cool soon and he enters the action. And also, Law was headed to that place as well, right? Because he was going to get Beppo after he was upset, because Shinobu was blaming Beppo and the rest of Law's crew for possibly leaking the plan, leaking the information. And so what I think is cool about this is that so far in Wano, we've seen two characters that are Supernova and that are captains, and they've stood up for their partners. Law with Beppo, as I've already said, and then in this chapter, Kid shows us how much he actually cares about Killer. We know that Oda has said that he doesn't like it when fans predict his stuff. He doesn't like it when fans get parts of the story right. So to me, the fact that Killer turned out to be Kamaso, like at one point he must have sat down and said, so the fans want Killer or think that Killer is going to fight Zorro at some point, right? Well, I'm going to give it to them, except they're not going to know it's actually happening. This was such a cool, well thought out twist. I mean, I didn't see anyone predict this. That Killer would be Kamaso. And it explained so much because I actually went back and reread the fight. You can't read that fight without thinking about Killer anymore. And obviously there's no way you could have known that Killer was Kamaso. But if you actually reread the fight, there are some very subtle hints that Oda drops about this being the case. The first thing is the hair. It's just kind of fluffy and long like Killer, right? Although it's in a ponytail. The second thing is Kamaso, when he fights Zorro, is using two sights, which is what Killer uses. And the only time where we've seen Killer actually in action, I think, was back in Saboti when he was trying to fight Urouge, but then Drake interrupted the fight. But the bits that we did see, Killer uses a lot of air action. There's a lot of flips. You know, he likes jumping into the air and stuff. And if you notice Kamaso's fighting style, it's the exact same way. Bunch of flips, back and forth. It just, man, this took me by surprise. Also, when Zorro's fighting him, he has a thought. And he thinks to himself, man, this guy is strong. So I think narratively, story-wise, this kind of justifies Zorro fainting a little bit more. Not feet-wise, because feet-wise I'm still kind of like, how does that make sense? But story-wise, it makes more sense, because it wasn't just like a random Wano man-slaying criminal, it was actually Killer. This chapter was full of surprises, because not only did we find out that Killer was Kamaso, but we also found out that Luffy remembered who Killer was without his mask. That's surprising. Luffy doesn't usually remember most people. So when he's like, that's the guy from back then, it's like, whoa. So he recognizes who Killer is, but yet he doesn't recognize Sogeking as Usopp, and then he also doesn't remember who Marco is. Robin has to tell him at one point that Marco is the guy that looks like a pineapple. The fighting of the beginning aside, this was a great chapter for character. The character of Killer, the character of Kid. It just shows how far Kid is actually willing to go for his partner, for one of his crew. Like, he literally was free. He was running around free, and he came back. He allowed himself to get captured again because of Killer. I mean, I did not expect that from Kid, honestly. I have to say that. So it's just like, it just makes him a more three-dimensional character. I had a little bit of trouble understanding the translations for what Kid was saying about Killer's backstory. There's a part where he's talking about why he started wearing the mask, and I don't know if he was wearing the mask so that people wouldn't associate his laugh with his face, or if he was just kind of like, he stopped laughing altogether and he just decided to hide his face because he became a killer, essentially. But it does kind of seem like maybe Killer had a little bit of a Katakuri complex with, you know, just being ashamed of that laugh. And then eventually, because of the smile, that laugh came back, and it came back at full force. So something that Killer was already ashamed of, now it's like something that he can't control. And it's so heartbreaking because you see the revelation, that panel with the masked man in the background, and you can see that the Killer is actually crying, but he can't cry properly because of the smile side effect. So Kid and Killer are being waterboarded, or not really, but you know, they're being tortured with water. And I have to say, despite the scene depicting torture. The art in those panels where you see them underwater is impeccable. Great art for that torture scene. I know it sounds weird to say, but it looks so realistic and good and gruesome. So it just adds that much more emotion to the scene. Now Queen comes up with a trap and tells Luffy that as long as Luffy's doing all right, as long as Luffy's okay, they're going to be kept underwater. So it's like they either die or Luffy dies, just to trap him. And we get a little bit more information about like how Queen is. Again, great chapter for character. He's a little bit more methodical than I initially gave him credit for, because Luffy tells him, wait, like this whole thing about like keeping them underwater, that doesn't make sense because they have nothing to do with me. To which Queen replies, if that's the case, then why are you getting upset? So it adds a little bit more characterization to the Yonko commander. Anyhow, we also find out that just like Big Mom, he gets cranky when he doesn't get his Oshiruko. Luffy throws a punch at Queen and Queen just kind of flips it away. I wonder if he was trying to use the concept of flow. Doesn't seem like it because his fist was clenched. It just seemed like a very basic punch coming from Luffy to try and do anything up against a Yonko commander. So maybe he was trying to scale him with that punch. Maybe he was just trying to get a feel for how tough Queen is based on that punch, so that he knows how much power he'll need to be able to clash with him. Luffy has like a little bit of a Roger moment where he declares to Queen that he will be the one to decide when and where he dies. And I actually took it as a reference to a quote by Law, which was taught to him by Doflamingo, which is that weaklings don't get to choose how they die, or weaklings don't get to choose their way of death. But also, Luffy saying or declaring that he's going to be the one to choose where and when he dies is a reference to Roger, in the sense that Roger, if you remember, Roger was the one who actually gave himself up. He allowed himself to be captured. He turned himself into the Marines and started this new pirate era. So it seems like that was also very intentional on his part. And then, of course, the chapter ends with Wedding Geki! And she has that face going on, you know, that dreaded face that we became so familiar with by the end of Whole Cake Island, where we just wanted that to end. And for her to get the wedding cake, and so now she's screaming, Oshiruka! I wonder where Chopper and the rest are. Would it be kind of dark if, like, oh, she just ate them off screen? I mean, that would never happen, but still, it's like, you don't see the rest of the gang there with her. You don't even see the gator. Like, we don't get to see her eyes fully, so maybe she still has some sense left in her. What her arrival does is that it kind of makes Queen's trap irrelevant now, because we know what's going to happen. Like, Kid and Killer are not going to be held underwater. Big Mom's going to go in there and destroy everything. It'd be interesting if she actually clashes with Queen and she takes him out. That'd be really interesting. But then it leaves us with the question, well, if that happens and Queen is taken out, who are going to be Sanji and Zoro's opponents? This chaos is setting up to be the climax of Act 2. And so between the chaos in the capital and the chaos here in Udon with Big Mom, after this, I can definitely see like a brief time jump. I just want to know, like, is it going to be Zoro versus Kyoshiro, Sanji versus Drake? Are those going to be their opponents for the arc, or do you think it's going to be like a Calamity each, or a Yonko Commander each? I would much rather have a Calamity, but I don't know. There's some hints here for setup. They're just very hard to read because everything is so chaotic. I think even Robin says it in this chapter. She tells Nami, after this, we're going to need to find a new rendezvous point, a new meeting place once the dust settles from all of this, because this is just, I mean, it's too much and it's too early. So I definitely foresee Act 3 opening up with a time jump, even if it's a brief one, even if it's short. Overall, this was a fantastic chapter of One Piece. If you've been following me for a while, you know that the aspect that I value the most out of this story is the world building, because Oda is just so exceptional at it. He's an amazing storyteller when it comes to the world building and fleshing it out. It's the same reason for why Zou and Reverie, even though they're short, they're my favorite post-time skip arcs. And if you notice, this chapter, didn't have a lot of world building, very little world building, if any. This was a character chapter with action sprinkled in the beginning. So no world building, and yet Oda is capable of delivering this fantastic chapter. So Oda was like, I know you like my world building, but don't underestimate my power when it comes to character chapters. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all your support as well. I really appreciate it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already for more One Piece related content and reviews. Like the video if you did, and comment down below with your thoughts about the chapter. This is 944. Catch you guys later. Bye.